During the Assad regime in Syria, thousands of people were tortured in dozens of centers, including Saydnaya prison. Assad's regime put opponents of power in a torture prison. Now the prisoners are being released, and thousands of Syrians came to the prison building trying to find their relatives. Upon entering Damascus, the rebels freed prisoners from the Seydnaya military prison, which human rights activists called a human slaughterhouse and a death camp due to the brutal torture used on prisoners. What is known about this symbol of repression of the Assad regime is in the RTVI report. Saydnaya is located in a mountainous area about 30 kilometers from Damascus and is under the jurisdiction of the Syrian Ministry of Defense and was run by the military police. In 2016, Amnesty International estimated that up to 20,000 prisoners were held in the two buildings of Syria. After the rebels entered the prison, there were reports that hidden underground cells had been discovered there, the so-called Red Block, where thousands of prisoners could be held. The Syrian Civil Defense, known as the White Helmets, reported on the social network X that it had begun investigating the claims. Since the popular uprising in Syria began in March 2011, the collapsed Ba'athist regime has tortured thousands of people to death. There are concerns that this number could reach tens of thousands. According to the Syrian Organization for Human Rights, ousted regime forces have detained and tortured at least 1.2 million Syrians throughout the civil war. During the war, the regime announced more than 20 so-called amnesties, but according to international human rights groups, it continued to detain Syrians. Numerous international reports have highlighted that the regime tortured detainees to death and that security forces were turned into torture centers. Anadolu Agency has compiled a collection of torture centers and methods of the Ba'ath regime in Syria. More than 50 such centers have been established in almost all provinces of the country, according to the agency. Prisoners from the central prisons of Aleppo, Hama, Adra in Damascus, Homs, and Suwaida were released. The prisoners were met by their relatives. People came to the prison walls not knowing for sure whether their relatives were alive or not, writes The Guardian. Some former prisoners had a hard time accepting that Bashar al-Assad's regime had fallen, and some did not even know that he had succeeded his father, Hafez al-Assad, who died in 2000.
Вот так вот сирийская армия отступает. Вот, я бы сказал, бежит, все бросает, переодевается в гражданскую форму одежды, оставляет оружие, полностью снаряженные автоматы с магазинами, и уходит в направление иракской границы с Ливией. То в Ирак, то в Ливан. Поэтому просто оружие. О. Здравствуйте, блядь. Я вас жду. А вот здесь убежал майор. Убегал. Поэтому все печально, блядь. Полная неспособность, дезорганизация, потеря управления, блядь. Просто сами пытаются выжить, блядь, в создавшейся ситуации, блядь, которая сложилась, блядь. Печально. Очень печально все это наблюдать. Даже в Судане такого нет. Как-то так, господа. Наверное, рота, блядь, ушла четким строгим шагом.
New video footage has been released, showing the release of inmates from the Syrian government's notorious Seydnaya prison near capital Damascus. The prison is known as Syria's slaughterhouse for the torture and persecution of inmates there. About 30,000 people were killed in the prison between 2011 and 2020, according to Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The video posted on X social media platform shows inmates leaving the jail after the prison's door were opened by the opposition forces who ousted long-standing Bashar al-Assad regime after lightning offensive launched 2 weeks ago. These were arrested by Bashar al-Assad's regime in the Red Prison in Sednaya, which is similar to Abu Ghraib prison in torture and bad reputation, journalist Taleb Baslev wrote on X.
داخل الزنزانات لا السلامة طاع خالص الحمد لله على السلامة عم طالع طاع خلاص سقط بشار طاع سقط مبروك طاع الحمد لله انا من هون من هون انا من درعا الحمد لله شوف الله يقويكم هذا متسين الله يقويكم متسين سقط بشار حماله فتح الزنازين زنزانة رقم 4 الحمد لله على السلامة طاع الحمد لله انتوا احرار طاع الحمد لله على سلامتكم الله يحميكم يا رب الحمد لله على السلامة الحمد لله على سلامتكم الحمد لله على السلامة طاع ما في شيء سقط الحمار